How open contact with interdimensional extraterrestrials will heal the narcissism of 3D planet Earth. ETs are changing the world through a new form of interdimensional telepathic channeling. Hello everybody, this is Michael Denney. This is the Michael Denney YouTube channel, formerly the Thunder Wizard YouTube channel. Disclosure is coming. Open contact is here. So what is happening around the world and what is happening in the minds of many people, and my belief, my prediction is that this phenomenon is going to expand exponentially, is destroying the narcissism of the third dimension. So here's how open contact is going to look. It's not going to be fleets of spaceships landing on the White House lawn and the President Trump arm in arm with Nordic ETs doing photo ops and telling the world we're now at peace, we're only going to worry about 0 point energy and everybody loves each other, and that's not how it's going to happen. So I'm here to tell you that everything that you hear that has to do with extraterrestrials cooperating, working with government or military is a lie. All of those programs, all of the whistleblowing. So right now you're going to hear a lot of whistleblowers. They're starting to come out of the woodwork, and you're going to hear a lot of stuff like this. They're going to present themselves as they're showing the truth about humans interacting with extraterrestrials and underground bases in the Antarctic, and they've been teaching us. It's all nonsense. What is going to happen in terms of how extraterrestrials are going to have a part in creating the fifth dimensional awakening is by working individually with spiritually minded human beings to shift their internal psychological profile so that they shift from living in a narcissistic frequency and or victim frequency and shift that to a higher dimensional unconditional love frequency. So I'm speaking on my personal experience. Now, I also have some experience knowing about narcissism and narcissistic trauma and narcissistic abuse. I've got another channel where I go into depth about a lot of that. And so I'm talking about this because I am realizing more and more that this frequency shift that is coming and we're experiencing, what it's doing is it's doing a couple things. Number one, it's bringing people's narcissism to the forefront. And so some people are becoming more narcissistic, more abusive. You're going to see the dark force elites, the globalist elites, you're going to see them ramp up their narcissistic games and lies and manipulation and other stuff. They're gonna ramp that up. They would be doing a lot more if it weren't for the fact that in the United States there are at least some people like RFK Jr. who are working in the exact opposite direction to undermine all of that. But that doesn't take away the fact that they're still doing it. They're still messing with the weather. They're still trying to create pandemics. They're still trying to destroy the economy, to create the you'll own nothing and be happy. They're still working on that, but they're limited. But the people who have the most power, the last holdouts, are the military-industrial complex, specifically those that have developed and or stolen technology from extraterrestrials. Those people are the most, they're the tick that's buried the deepest in the, on the world, they're going to be the hardest to get out. They're going to be the last that'll be openly seen. But it looks like it's coming. In any case, we are going through this transformation where narcissism is being exposed and destroyed. So I'm going to be talking to you about that right now. So again, how open contact with interdimensional ETs will heal the narcissism of 3D Earth. So 3D frequency is held together by narcissistic devaluation. So I'm throwing out around the word narcissism. Now I'm here to tell you there's a 90% chance that you have a misunderstanding of what narcissism is. People use this word all the time, and they use it for everything they don't like. So from a psychological perspective, narcissism has a very specific definition. And narcissism is not where you are in love with yourself. Narcissism is not that you have a huge ego and you feel that you are superior to everybody else. Narcissism is actually the opposite. Narcissism comes from a state of extreme emptiness, extreme pain, a lack of identity, feeling isolated, unloved, feeling full of self-hatred, feeling unlovable, feeling not valuable, not relevant, feeling powerless. That's the big thing, feeling completely powerless. This is what narcissism is. Now, the way that narcissists defend themselves against this feeling varies. So what people call a narcissist, they're talking about what is actually a grandiose, malignant psychopath. If you ask somebody what a narcissist is, they'll say a narcissist is somebody who doesn't have any empathy and is only out to manipulate and harm people. And that's only the extreme of it. There's other forms of narcissism, as it turns out. In fact, victims, so people who are perpetual victims of narcissists, like super empaths, who talk about they're constantly, victims of narcissistic abuse and narcissistic people. That is also narcissism. That can be called vulnerable narcissism, covert narcissism. But narcissism isn't just about being a grandiose psychopath. It has to do with your relationship internally to your own sense of self. Let's keep going. All right, so 3D Earth frequency is held together by narcissistic devaluation. This is an important devalue. Value means to be loved. If you're valuable, you're loved. So to be devalued is when somebody does something that in an attempt to make you look or feel less lovable, less valuable to them or to the world. And so let's see, what else did I say about that? So narcissistic devaluation. So narcissistic devaluation is the frequency of the third dimension. Now, all human beings are projecting and creating the third dimension. So our third dimensional reality is not the same third dimensional reality that existed 13,000 years ago. So if we're talking about the dimension, now people get frequency conflated with dimensions. People talk about densities. That's a made-up term. There is no such thing. Frequency is a real thing. So within the third dimension, there are multiple frequencies, right? The higher you go up in frequency, the more love, the more spirituality. The lower you go in frequency, the more destructive, violent, and unpleasant it is. But it's all within the third dimension. And I believe that it's possible to be in a frequency that is in the third dimension, but you'll actually be in a completely different world. So it's not a different world. You're still on Earth, but the frequency is such that what you'll see is, what is unique to that frequency. So I'm saying that it is my belief and my experience that our world that we live in is a specific frequency within the third dimension. And within that frequency, the projection that keeps that frequency intact is narcissistic devaluation. Whether it's being done to you, or you are doing it to somebody else, or you're doing it to yourself. So in other words, this is what's happening. This is how humans function. Humans function from first an assumption, a devalued assumption. They have an assumption that they're small, they're unloved, and that they're isolated, powerless. Monotheist religion. What is the basis of not monotheist religion? There is a God who demands perfection, and if you don't meet that perfection, you are sinful, you're deserving of death, destruction, and so you constantly have to be perfect, and it's impossible. That same religion will say, God demands perfection, but it's impossible, you can never meet his perfection. And so then you have all kinds of different variations of that. You have Islam, which is, I'm going to chop your heads off if you don't believe what we say. Judaism, and then there's Christianity, which then spiritualizes it and says, if you don't believe what we tell you to believe, then you're going to spend the rest of your life in hell. The worst, you're not even going to be killed. You'll just be tortured forever. So that is why that religion became so popular, because in Kali Yuga, which is when we were at the deepest level of the third dimensional narcissistic vibration, that's when those religions took over the world. All right, I'm getting in the weeds here. All right, so 3D Earth frequency is held together by narcissistic devaluation. Narcissism is a defense against intense insecurity, self-judgment, isolation. So somebody who's a narcissist, Ted Bundy, Hitler, I don't care. We would agree those guys were narcissists, psychopathic narcissists. So anybody who's a narcissist, the behavior they exhibit towards others, the abuse, the torture, the control, the enslavement, all this, we could go on and on and on. That behavior is the result of the person's internal psyche acting in defense against their internal experience of being unlovable. I mean, the horror, not just feeling, I don't feel, nobody loves me, like the absolute terror and horror of being unlovable, of being completely isolated, of being completely powerless, of being completely worthless. All of those judgments, the judgment that God puts on people, you're imperfect and there's nothing you can ever do to meet my standards of perfection, bow before me. That's clearly a narcissist. Well, that comes from intense internal experience of insecurity. So acting out in a narcissistic way is a defense against that. Conversely, so is victim mentality. Victim mentality is not the opposite of narcissism. It is the flip side. It is narcissism. And it is a defense against that feeling of being unlovable, unworthy. And so you seek out to procure love and acceptance. Now, that can be somebody going to work, working a 9-to-5 job and hating it, but doing it so that they can make money or become rich or just survive. I mean, the society's been created. This is a slave society. It's impossible to live in this society and not be a slave. It's impossible. Unless you're lucky enough to have, rich parents, or you're lucky enough to be born in a lot of money, and that's a whole other narcissistic thing. But unless you have that, if you don't go and keep the cogs of business moving, selling widgets or whatever it is, if you don't do that, you won't be given any resources. You won't be given a place to live. You won't be given any food. So the idea that we're free in society to go and do what we want, where we want, is a lie. That's just not the case. We're seeing that more and more as the middle class is being completely deleted. And there's not only two classes. There's poverty, and then there's rich. And then homeless. There's homeless, there's poor, and then there's rich. And there's very little in between. And it's not like it was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, anybody could have a middle class life if they were willing to go and work 8 hours a day at a job. If you went and worked 8 hours a day at a job, unless you were, I mean, even, you know, somebody who was a janitor or a garbage worker, you could still go and buy a house. Might not be on the hill, but you could buy a house, pay a mortgage. You could do all that. That's impossible now. It's getting more and more impossible just to function. We have people now who have full-time jobs that would normally put them in the lower middle class, where they're not poor, but they're not rich, but they have everything that you need to function: a car, a house, all of that. People who have jobs that used to pay that are now living in, people who have jobs like that are now living in their cars. Did I say that right? Anyway. So narcissism is a defense against intense insecurity, self-judgment, and isolation. The defense to the third dimension devaluation is to create a narcissistic, judgmental inner self. So this is what you're doing, is you're getting out in front of the abuse. So you know the abuse is coming, and you know it's going to be bad, and you know it's going to hurt. So instead, you go and do it to yourself. So it would be like, let's say you have an abusive parent, and you know that your parent is going to smack you for whatever it is. You know, you name it. And so you know it's coming. So instead, what you do is you run out into the living room where your parents are, and you have a hammer, and you say, "I know I did wrong. You don't have to hurt me. Watch." Bang, 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 and you hurt yourself. You hurt yourself in the hopes that they'll go, "Okay, all right, I won't do it since you just did it to yourself. Good for you. I love you. Good for you. You beat yourself up. I'm happy. Thank you for doing that." It never works that way. They'll do it. They'll say, "Don't. That's my privilege. I'm going to smack you around." But we think if we get out in front of it and if we beat ourselves up, then they'll leave us alone, or maybe they'll love us and accept us. So the defense to 3D devaluation is to create a narcissistic, judgmental inner self. This is why people are perfectionists. This is why people are neurotic. This is why people have mental illnesses. Because that is, you know, look, just to give you an example in my life, you know, when I don't have, you know, like if I have days where there's not a whole lot of work to do, even if I have what I need, I have all of my needs met, I will feel like, gosh, I'm wasting my time. I really need to do something. I really need to get some work done. And I'll make up stuff to do, even if it doesn't benefit me financially or work-wise, just so I can go, yeah, I did something. What did you do today? Oh, I got some work done. And I'm not alone. I know pretty much everybody does that same thing, but that's what that is. You're beating the crap out of yourself, getting ahead of the judgment so that you won't be judged externally. So you have this internal, it's called an introject. Introject. There's a little judge that's sitting in your brain constantly telling you how screwed up you are and what you need to do to be a better person. And we create those in order to defend us so that we'll be ready when the external judgment comes. So the defense to 3D devaluation is to create a narcissistic, judgmental inner self. 3D narcissistic frequency is created when humans support each other's narcissism. So we've got this little introject, this little person, and it could be, it's like an AI. That's a really good way to put it. It's like an AI program. It could be an AI program of your mother, your father, your spouse, God, society, whoever it is that you want to be accepted by. Create this little introjection. All right, what was I saying? So the narcissistic frequency is created when humans support each other's narcissism. So now, this is an unnatural thing. Now, I know this. If you haven't done this, you may not know this. So I used to spend 2 weeks by myself in the forest of the Sierras. I would go off into the Sierras and I would go backpacking by myself for 2 weeks. And if you think that just sounds like fun, I'm telling you, you learn a lot. This was even before cell phones and internet. We had television and we had books and we had newspapers and we had interaction with other people. So when I would go by myself up into the wilderness, I didn't have access to anything except myself. And very powerful wilderness, which is, a lot of spirit energy. There's the reason why monks go off into the mountains. The reason why Shiva sits on top of a mountain. It's because there's a lot of spiritual energy there. So I would go and spend 2 weeks there. And for the first 3 days, like the first day, oh, you're great. By day number 2, by day number 3, you're starting to get really uncomfortable because you don't have anything, you don't have any television to watch, you don't have any newspapers to read. I didn't bring books or anything like that, so I didn't have anything to, and so I'd just be stuck with all of this power and this wilderness and stars, and it's just, you're just left with whatever's inside of you. And I would go kind of bonkers. And then by day 6, by the 6th day, my head would pop open. And all of a sudden I would realize that everything that was bothering me, reputation, money, debt, am I married yet? Does anybody love me? Am I good looking enough? All of those things. I realized that all of that was nonsense. Now, unless you've experienced it, you may know what I'm saying, but unless you've experienced that awakening when you're in the middle of nowhere and you realize that it's all made up. This is how I know that money is made up. That's when it popped into my mind. I said, I'm worried about what again? Pieces of paper? I'm worried about pieces of paper? How does that give me any value? When you're in the wilderness and you can see there's fish in the lake that you can feed, you can get nuts and berries. There's deer, not that I'm a hunter or fisher, but it became clear to me if I wanted to survive, food is everywhere. I want a house, I cut down a tree and I could build a house. So you become aware that nature gives you everything that you need. And the idea that, the way we've set it up, it becomes really clear that's just complete nonsense. Well, how did I get on that? So 3D, okay, so what I was trying to say is that when I didn't have other people around or access to communication from the narrative, like newspapers or television or books, when I didn't have that around to continue to keep telling my introject, what to think and what to believe, it started falling apart. So 3D frequency is created even if we're not connected to each other. But our psychological energy that we're projecting, we're all receptors of that. We're all antennas, and even if if you're living anywhere near other human beings, even if you don't talk to them, the energy is getting to you and it's telling you how to think and what to think. And I learned this again. We're talking 30, 40 years ago. I learned this when I would come out of the mountains. So 6 days my head would pop open and I'd realize how ridiculous it is, and I would let go of all of that. And then spiritually things would start to go crazy and my meditations would go into the stratosphere. Spirits and things would show up, and I would feel like I was going to leave. I'm looking back on it now and I think it was literal. But I'd start to feel like if I stay by myself on this mountain, I'm going to leave this world. I had all this energy running through my body. And so after 2 weeks, I'd have to come back down to reality. I'd have to come back to a job. I'd have to come back to, society. And, my food was running out and all that. So I had to come back. And what would happen is I would hike out of the mountains and I'd get to my car. I'd get in my car and I'd start driving down the mountain. And when I'd get down to about 5,000 or 6,000 feet, I could feel myself, boom, I could feel all of the narrative, all of the thoughts. All of a sudden I was like hit, bam, with all of that. And I would cry. I would weep as I was driving down because I was in such a beautiful place, and then I'd be going back into hell. And people don't realize it. If you've lived your whole life in cities, if you've lived your whole life surrounded by people, you have no idea what it's like to be disconnected from that. So I've learned that from personal experience, that there's a frequency that human beings create with their thoughts. And it is something that we use and we hold ourselves together. So this is what the internet is about. This is what television is about. This is why there are people who want to control the internet and television, because they know if they can control that, they can control the frequency at which you operate. Okay, so 3D narcissistic frequency is created when humans support each other's narcissism. So, when people want to go, let's say they want to go and complain, right? They want to go and gossip. They want to go complain about whatever it is. They're creating they're supporting each other in a specific frequency. This is what church is about. This is what getting together, it doesn't matter. When you get together, you support a frequency. So 3D narcissistic frequency is created when people actively seek to support the victim mentality, the narcissism that we have. You ask, why would we do that? Because if you don't do that, you end up excluded, isolated, and you feel alone. So people do this all the time. I mean, it's called Stockholm Syndrome. In order to be part of a community, you will shift your values and your thinking in order to survive. And so you'll shift your frequency in order to be part of the group. It's a defense mechanism. It's a survival mechanism. So 3D narcissistic frequency is created when humans support each other's narcissism. Self-devaluation is a defense against the lack of or the fear of being unconditionally loved. So I'm going to repeat that because it's important. Self-devaluation is a defense against the lack of or a defense against the fear of being unconditionally loved. So I'm here to tell you that the most frightening thing is not going to hell and being tortured by the devil. The most frightening thing any human being can experience is to be completely unconditionally loved. Now, you're saying, no, that's what I want. I want to be loved. No, you don't. You think you do. But there's really only two choices. There's two choices in this reality. The choice is either being accepted by the third dimensional narrative, or to experience and go after complete unconditional self-love. Those are the only two things that life is about. That's it. And you're going in one direction or the other. People say fear or love. It's either fear or love. Well, no, it's narcissistic devaluation, or unconditional love. Because even the love we have in the third dimensional love is conditional. You're married, that love is conditional. Your parents have conditional love for you. If you obey them, they love you. The law, church, God, it's all conditional. Even though, churches claim to have that Jesus has unconditional love. He didn't have unconditional love. Jesus said, if you believe me, you'll be saved. If you don't believe me, you'll go to hell. That's conditional. Unconditional says there's literally nothing you can do that will make me not love you and want the best for you. So we don't know what unconditional love. I'm here to tell you that. And when you've experienced higher dimensional love, you know what I'm talking about. You know that there's nothing in this frequency that comes close to it. So self-devaluation is a defense against unconditional love. Self-devaluation. Feeling unloved, feeling not valuable, feeling unworthy, feeling irrelevant, feeling isolated, feeling powerless, feeling victimized, feeling underappreciated, all of that. All of those feelings are self-generated. People do it to you. They can throw those things at you. But you have to choose to then, at some point, accept it, and then, like I said, the little introject starts doing it. Your little introject in your mind is told, here's how you're supposed to feel. And you go, oh, okay, I didn't know that's what I needed. And then so you're told, I'm supposed to hate myself, I'm not good enough, I'm powerless, money is where my value is, or how my body looks, or how powerful I am, or how frightening I am, or how submissive I am. Those are the things that are important. Those things will give me value. In other words, I don't have any inherent value. Oh, my value is based on what I do, not who I am. Got it. So that is life. And even in the best scenario in the third dimension, there's still an element of that. Like I said, the best marriages in the world are still conditional. You cheat on your wife, doesn't matter how good of a relationship is, she's going to leave you. You know what I'm saying? It's that kind of a thing. Dogs have unconditional love. I heard this, it was funny. If you want to find out what unconditional love is, lock your wife and your dog together in the trunk. Leave them there for a day. Come back the next day, open the trunk. The dog is going to be happy to see you because the dog has unconditional love. Your wife is going to be pretty upset that she doesn't have unconditional love. Her love will, as a human, will only go so far. And then at some point, if you don't meet her conditions, she's going to stop loving you. That's true for everybody in the third dimension. It's not true for them. Outside of the third dimension, it's impossible. I'm telling you, it is impossible to get those beings to be angry with you, to have any negative feelings towards you. They won't interact with you if you're in a lower frequency. And if you're focusing on negativity, anger, hatred, fear, victim mentality, they're going to back away and they're not going to have anything to do with it because it'll harm them. But their opinion of you and their feelings of you will never... You can never, ever destroy that. They will love you unconditionally no matter what you do. And this is something that just isn't true in the third dimension. All right, so self-devaluation is a defense against the lack of unconditional love. So the irony is here, if we don't get unconditional love, or to the degree that we don't get unconditional love, we create a negative introject that we start to devalue ourselves. So if somebody's born in a very abusive home, they didn't get a whole lot of love, the introject is going to be very strong, and then you got a full-blown narcissist who's so full of self-hatred that the only way they can handle it is they go out and they abuse other people so that they can, regulate that. Normal, happy, healthy people, quote unquote, who get love and all of that, they still have a need to be approved of, to be seen a certain way. This is all self-devaluation. So it's not a question of if you're devaluing yourself, it's a question of how much you're devaluing yourself. So self-devaluation is a defense against when you don't get enough love. Again, you devalue yourself, because as a child, an infant worships the parent. So the parent is the source of love, the source of identity. And so infants see their parents, they deify their parents. And so they learn that they can't hate their parent because their parent fails them. Mom doesn't feed them. Mom doesn't change the diaper. Even if mom is just a little bit late, and the kid is hungry and crying a little bit, the infant can't devalue God because then God might not take care of you. So in their minds, they say, no, God is perfect. So when they're abused, they justify it. So they go, well, I deserved it. I wasn't good enough. We do this, we grow up and we do that in real life. Oh, I don't have washboard abs. I don't have $1 million. I don't have the right car. Oh, I'm not, whatever it is. So we devalue ourselves in order to justify the abuse, because it's abusive for society to judge you based on how you look, based on how much money you have, based on how talented you are. If we get judged, and we get judged for that all the time. People romantically will discard somebody because they're not good looking enough or they're not rich enough. And healthy people do that. So to survive, we justify it. We say, oh, well, I'm not, that's okay. On the extreme end, when we get into whatever that syndrome I just said, you devalue, you justify the abuse to such a level you go, no, it's okay that they do that. No, yeah, they're headhunters and they're they do all kinds of they do Diddy parties to everybody, but that's okay because for them, we justify it. So it's a defense against not getting love, but at the same time, because we are created and function within this frequency of self-devaluation, when love comes along, true unconditional love, we'll get into this, it will be so frightening that the individual will respond to it with narcissistic behavior. So they will respond to it with destructive action. This is called, people do this in romantic relationships. People will sabotage a relationship because it's going too good, because it's getting too scary. When people say, I'm falling in love. So I'm going to tell you, in the higher dimensions, people don't fall in love. Higher dimensional beings love each other. They don't fall into love. Fall means, I'm out of control, I can't stop it. And it has inherent within it a fear. And what is the fear? The fear of being devalued, rejected. So people say, oh, I'm so scared, I think I'm falling for you, meaning that they're aware that if they get rejected, it's really going to hurt and they won't have the power to protect themselves from that. So the fear of being unloved, or the experience of being completely loved, makes somebody feel so vulnerable. It creates such fear within them that they then become abusive. I went through this when I first started working with light beings. It was very blissful, but I remember at one point, I have to say it was probably just a few weeks into the experience. Just a few weeks into the experience, I remember having this overwhelming feeling of thinking about the ETs. What are you doing? You're destroying the world. Why are you lying to me? You're lying to me. It was crazy. And I had an experience, and they were all standing there, and they weren't saying anything, but the thought was, we're not doing any of that to you. And I had to think about it. These beings have done nothing but be kind and loving to me. They haven't asked anything from me. Why? That's because that was my narcissistic response to the overwhelming unconditional love that was destroying my narcissistic defenses. All right, so in the 3D mind, to experience unconditional love feels like ego annihilation. All right, so this is important. Now, bear in mind the context behind this is that this is what's coming. So the shift isn't going to be we're lying around one day and we get hit by a beautiful wave and we're all just happy and evolved now. And, oh gosh, remember when we weren't evolved? Oh, that was yesterday. I feel so much better. So people are waiting for something to hit them and make them happy. What's going to happen is you're getting hit with energy and you're going to get hit with more of it. But you're going to have to go through an ego death. Again, going back to my experience early on, I remember talking to some people and being in tears and saying, I feel like I'm going to disappear. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just when I talk to these beings, I feel like I'm going to disappear. Well, I haven't disappeared, but what has happened is that my narcissistic defenses have been seriously reduced. And so it's the fear of losing your identity. And that's how I came to realize that I was identified, that my identity as a third dimensional being had to do with living in the third dimension. And if the reality of taking that third dimensional reality away from me made me feel as though I was going to disappear. So I've identified with that frequency to such a degree that if that frequency is shifted, that means I won't exist anymore. Now, this isn't true, but it means we identify with that frequency, and that frequency is narcissistic devaluation. This is why narcissists don't go to therapy. Because they'd have to look at themselves. They'd have to acknowledge when they were wrong, when they were mistaken, when they were selfish. I know, I just had a conversation with my soon-to-be ex-landlord, who's been extremely narcissistic towards me. And, I was trying to have a conversation with him, and he kept on gaslighting me. I said, you're not taking any responsibility for this. You created this issue we're having. I've been nothing but helpful. I'm just blank, dead eye, nobody home. He's a narcissist, as it turns out. But that's because he's incapable it's not that he doesn't want to take responsibility. It's that he's incapable of it. If he's the slightest bit wrong, it will destroy him. It will kill him. This is what it's like. So that's an extreme example, a guy who I believe now has a mental illness. But for just the normal, healthy, average person, they're going to have that same experience when they're hit with unconditional love. It's going to feel like they're about to die. They're about to not just die a horrible death, they're just going to cease to exist. They'll disappear. All right, the 3D mind, to experience unconditional love feels like ego annihilation. Ego annihilation is worse than death. It is complete deletion of self. Complete deletion of self. Christianity is brilliant because they don't completely annihilate you. They throw you in hell forever. So you don't get annihilated. Your self never gets deleted. Now, you don't realize it, but that's comforting. Oh, well, at least I'll be alive. Oh, I'll be tortured forever? Well, I'm tortured now, so what difference does it make? This is what's going on in the unconscious. That is much more frightening to have the thought of you. Now, I know some of you out there think that that's what you want. You think that you want to just disappear. But I guarantee you, when that actually is presented to you, you're going to feel you don't want to disappear. You might want to leave this world and go someplace else, but you're not going to want to disappear. It's the most frightening thing you can experience. Love will do that. Unconditional love will destroy narcissism. If you identify with narcissistic frequency, then when you're hit with love, your first reaction will feel as though you're going to be deleted. Narcissist victims will violently attack any energy that brings unconditional love. People with borderline personality disorder, their main issue is they can't tolerate being loved because it feels like they're being consumed. And so they start out wanting to have love and intimacy, but when they get it, they then flip. They start attacking the other person. They'll slash their tires, throw knives at them, invent all kinds of things. They will violently attack the person, at the very least on an emotional level. That includes ghosting. That includes just disappearing. It includes cheating on you. All of those things are violent attacks against intimacy, true intimacy, which is very frightening. So these narcissistic victims will violently attack any energy that brings unconditional love. ETs are not narcissistic, therefore they love humans unconditionally. All right, so I have a theory now. I don't know if this is true or not. I guess we'll all find out. But my theory is that because we live in the third dimension, we live in a dualism. And in fact, in the third dimension, we live in a trinity. We have the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the unconscious mind. It is my belief that when we go beyond the third dimension, that there's no longer an unconscious mind. So higher dimensional beings, in humans, the majority of our thoughts, our feelings, our impulses, our actions, our beliefs, our memories, they're all unconscious. We're not aware of them. We're being completely driven by things we're not aware of. And so all of our fears are going to be, most of them are going to be lodged in our unconscious as well. So my experience with light beings is that there's no duplicity, there's no guesswork, there's no unconsciousness. They're fully conscious of everything that they think and feel and believe. So it is my belief that when we shift up there, we won't, we will have to become fully conscious. So we're getting hit with all this energy, and what's happening is we're having to become conscious of the things that we're shoving down. Listen, I'm here to tell you that, I'm watching myself, but I'm also watching other people I have worked with and other people I am working with. And I'm seeing a lot of people who are awakening and taking action, continuous action towards their awakening, no matter how difficult or painful, and they're blossoming. I've seen people who were doing that and did it for a long time, and then they bumped into some deep unconscious issues, and then they stopped and then started going backwards. And that's what I'm talking about. The defense against unconditional love. People are going to attack that, and the way they attack it is by acting destructively towards themselves as well as towards others. All right, to be loved unconditionally means to delete narcissistic devaluation and replace it with self-love. Now, here's where things are getting really interesting. So, narcissists, in order to escape the pain of the emptiness and the loneliness and the isolation and the insecurity, they create a false ego. That's why they come across very egotistical, why we call them narcissistic. They come across as though they're in love with themselves and they love themselves. But the truth is they don't. They can't tolerate their true experience, which is they hate themselves. They feel completely horrible and unlovable and unworthy. That's their true experience, but that's so painful. It's literally so painful it could kill them. If they were to feel it, it would be so overwhelming it would kill them. That's why a lot of people with these kinds of disorders self-delete, for that very reason. So what they do is the grandiose ones will create a false ego, and it'll be really grandiose. Cult leaders will say, I am God, you should worship me. Now they'll make it exclusive. They'll say, I am the God, and you should worship me. So what I'm finding is that when you work with ETs, the ETs will tell you you're God. But they tell everybody that. And it's true. They will come to you and they will tell you that you're their favorite person. And they're being truthful. But it's also true about the next person. Oh my God, you're my favorite person. You have no idea how much we love you. So it's very grandiose. The difference is when humans narcissistically create a grandiose false ego, it's false. It's not real. It's a delusion and or a lie. So a lot of narcissists will lie knowing that they're not something. And then they'll try and defend themselves from being found out. But the deluded ones, people who become absolutely deluded and think that they're, whatever it is, they get lost in the delusion because underneath that is a feeling of tremendous insecurity. So the ironic thing is that a very similar process happens when you interact with light beings. Light beings want to give you an inflated sense of self. They want to give you a deified sense of self. The difference is, from their perspective, it's the truth, and they're not trying to get anything from you. They're not trying to manipulate you. They're wanting you to have an actual internal identity that is huge and grandiose. So again, when I first started working with light beings, I thought I was going crazy because I was, what they were telling me was so grandiose, so unbelievable that I thought I must be having, a narcissistic delusion. Because, clearly this is impossible for me to be all these things they keep telling me that I am. So the difference between a narcissist is the narcissist creates a delusion and gets very attached to it and gets very defensive. So if you attack their grandiosity in any way, they will become extremely defensive about it, might even violently so. If you criticize them in any way, or criticize their presentation of themselves, they will become very defensive about that. When people are doing interaction with light beings, and the light beings tell them, oh, you're the God so-and-so, you created the universe, you're the most powerful being in existence. If you tell that to somebody else and they go, that sounds unbelievable, the human goes, I know, it's crazy. I think I'm making it up. So that's the difference. The difference is the 3D narcissistic false ego is just that. It's made up. It's not real. And it's a fake thing that you throw out to look better than you are. When you work with light beings, you find out what's really going on is that you're creating a smaller, devalued version of yourself so you don't see the true value of who you are. Because if you see your true value, your third dimensional frequency will delete. So unlike what you would think a light being comes to you and starts giving you this grandiose, you're a divine being, you're the God of such and such, you're the king of earth, or whatever crazy thing they say. You would think that the person would go, oh my God, that feels so good. I'm so amazing. But that's only because we see people who have those grandiose delusions about themselves are destructive, violent, selfish, manipulative. And so we can't tolerate the thought of somebody actually being that unless we spiritualize it, like Jesus or Buddha or Krishna. Oh, those beings, they're the full, or some enlightened master. He's fully enlightened. He doesn't poop. He floats. He doesn't have any negative feelings. We turn them into these unbelievable caricatures. When you find out that every single human is the avatar of God, then you start to realize, oh man, God's got a lot of emotional problems in the third dimension. And so it actually means that if you begin to accept that, then your internal ego actually starts to be manifested. In the narcissistic world, the ego doesn't exist. It's a fake ego, because narcissists don't have an identity. They don't have a sense of self. Light beings are saying that you do have a self, and it's this amazing, mythological, powerful, unbelievable, godlike figure. And so it's one thing to create a false identity within yourself, saying you're God when you know it's not true, and you're lying in order to not feel unlovable, to overcome your insecurity. And it's another thing when you actually internally start to believe that. It's a whole other thing. And when you do that, the third dimension starts coming apart. You have to die. This is what happened with Odin. That's why Odin sacrificed himself on the tree of life. That's how Odin became king of the gods. I'm convinced that this is the story of a human being, just an average human being who had a true awakening. And according to the myth, Odin sacrificed himself on the tree of life, which is the kundalini of the spinal column, the nervous system, the tree of life, and for 9 days and 9 nights, 9 represents transformation. Nobody came to him, nobody gave him anything to drink or anything to eat, which meant it was his own identity that was being destroyed and recreated. No other person. He didn't have any narcissistic interaction with other people, sharing, and he wasn't buying into a communal understanding of what this is and what life is. He was having a complete connection with himself. He sacrificed himself to himself. He didn't sacrifice himself to God. How many religions say that? They sacrifice themselves to God. He sacrificed himself to himself. What that means is that his self was the most powerful God in existence. So you find your true self by sacrificing your little self to your big self. When he did that, the runes appeared to him. Runes means secrets, the secrets of existence. When he sacrificed himself to himself, the secrets of existence revealed themselves to him. Now that wasn't enough. He then had to take them. He had to reach out and get them. And it says, screaming, he took them up. Again, more dying. It was painful. It was frightening. And what he described, if you go back and read it a few times, that is what happens when you interact with light beings, when you interact with higher dimensional beings, you will go through Odin's process of awakening. And then you'll be the king of the gods. And I don't mean that symbolically. I mean it truthfully. If you watch what's happening in these channeling sessions, so far there hasn't been any channeling session that hasn't been telling the other person, they're talking through me, stuff that ways I hadn't even thought of. They are telling these people how grandiose they are, how amazing and powerful they are. You know, the most powerful gods in existence, every single one of them. And you hear every single one, if you look on people's faces, they're like, it's not an easy thing to hear, because they're dying to their small third dimensional self in order to accept that. This is how it's going to be. This is just the beginning. All right, so ETs are not narcissistic, therefore they love humans unconditionally. To be loved unconditionally means to delete the narcissistic devaluation and replace it with self-love. So to replace that little introject that tells you what a piece of garbage with an introject that says, wow, I'm the Lord of this universe. I'm the creator of multiple galaxies. I am the awakener of consciousness. You know, those are some of my things. Who knows what yours are? And to have that, the narcissistic devaluation gets destroyed. Now, I'm here to tell you, I'm still in the third dimension as far as I can tell. I still struggle with all of the internal narcissistic devaluation. There's like a war going on inside of me. And, if you're beyond that, my hair is off to you. Narcissists feed off of the self-devaluation of others. ETs threaten this dynamic. So, the world now, I'm talking about the world, the narrative ego of the world is under attack. Because narcissists, in order to survive, they need to torture and damage and devalue people, and the torture and the devaluation gets worse with time, because it doesn't bring satisfaction to them. It's an addiction. You torture somebody a little bit, and then you get off on it, and then you go back and you can't do it. You have to do it twice as much to get to the same level of feeling of satisfaction. That's why we have billionaires who have tens of billions of dollars, and it's not enough. There's no amount of homes and yachts and countries and islands that they can buy that will ever fill that vacuum. It always gets worse and worse. And so the control, the coercion, the enslavement is getting to the point where, it's getting crazy. It's getting, the smart cities and the stuff they want to create. That stuff was unheard of 50 years ago. The fact that this is listening to me, and, I don't use this stuff, but I go and watch on my television. I go and watch YouTube, and I don't sign in. So supposedly the smart TV doesn't know who I am, right? But if I come back from the store and I bought vitamin C, or if I talk out loud and say I'm thinking about this product, my television, my phone, the computers at the grocery store down the street, when I use my debit card to buy food, it logs in all of that. It's all there. So if I go there and I buy vitamins, I come back here, I turn on my YouTube, there will be an ad for the exact brand of vitamins. I don't know how. I was literally just thinking about, should I have my oil changed and should I get new tires? Next thing I know, tire ads are popping up. And it's not just because I'm noticing them. They literally weren't there before. So they're listening to everything. The level of coercion, there's no privacy. I'm recording on this camera here, but there's no doubt in my mind everything I'm doing and saying is being logged in online, through my computer, through my phone. I know that my phone is listening to me. I know it. I know my TV is listening to me. My car, if I get in my car is listening to me. We are being completely tracked. There's literally no privacy. That is the act of an absolute, total, crazy narcissist that is so coercive and so invasive. There's literally, they have to control and know everything that you're thinking and doing. Neuralink. All right, so narcissists feed off the self-evaluation of others. ETs threaten this dynamic. So the reason why, from the beginning, there has been this push to frighten people about extraterrestrials is for this reason. It's because narcissists can't tolerate the thought of not having narcissistic control. And so if people first of all, knew the existence of ETs were real, the true existence, not the fake, gray aliens that come and, attack your poop sheet, but actual higher dimensional extraterrestrials. If humans, if all of humanity knew about them, it would be such a shift on every level. They wouldn't be able to control us financially because 0 Point would get rid of the oil economy that we have. Our economy is based on petroleum, so the petroleum economy would collapse. You wouldn't have to buy electricity. You wouldn't have to buy gasoline. You wouldn't have to buy natural gas to burn, and keep your house warm. You wouldn't have to do any of that. It would all be free. So they wouldn't be able to control you with money. But it goes even beyond that. If you can't be narcissistically abused if you have self-love. If you have self-love, you cannot be abused. And you can't be controlled. So the threat of human beings actually connecting with higher dimensional beings and having to go through the sacrifice of Odin in order to love themselves, that's the threat. ETs have that ability simply because they vibrate at a higher dimensional level because they live in a higher dimension. So just exposure to them will begin to shift you out of the narcissistic self-evaluation, which means that you won't be able to be abused. Now, the abusers aren't just abusing you because they want to hurt you. They're abusing you because that is literally the food that they live off of. That's why people want to believe in reptilians feeding off of your consciousness. That is actually a metaphor for what is going on with the narcissist. The narcissist, that's why it's not about money. It's gotten to the point where it's so bad that they want to put you in a smart city. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Everything will be given to you by drone. You'll be told what to do and where to go. That they just want to have you so they can feed off of you. They want to take away all of your power so they can feed off of you. If you don't have any more self-devaluation, they can't do that. They can't feed off of you. You would be too frightening to them. So the existence of extraterrestrials is far, 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 far more frightening and threatening to the powers that be. Not just because of money, but from a psychological perspective. If they can't feed off of you, they believe they will die. This is for their survival. This is how sad and screwed up these people are. Human beings are already narcissistic enough, but the people above it that's controlling that frequency, they survive off of your psychological devaluation. Literally, they feed off of it. So the battle for 5D is the battle of the narcissistic self versus the divine self. Interdimensional meditation and ET channeling are very dangerous to narcissistic elites. Very dangerous. The most dangerous thing there is. The most dangerous thing there is to connect directly with a higher dimensional force and allow the unconditional love to penetrate and shift you, to give you true self-empowerment, to give you true independence on the deepest level. That is the most frightening thing that there is. So that's my suggestion for you, to do that. All right, so I am continuing to do these channelings, channeled personal guidance from interdimensional ETs, which you can learn about if you go to channel.thunderwizard.com. I'm still doing these, and I'm loving them. And I really feel like every time I do one of these channelings, I feel like Earth gets a little bit lighter. Because what's happening is I'm actually being used as a portal. I'm a conduit. And so even though you're on the other side of a Zoom call, that energy is getting to you because of, non-locality, quantum entanglement. It doesn't matter. It's creating an interdimensional portal, and then that portal, the energy that's been increased, you take it with you. And everybody I've done this with so far that I've talked to, afterwards, the energy has continued to be there, and they've created, a more powerful connection. So I would love to do that for you. If you want to do it at the half price level, then I'm going to record that and put it up on my YouTube channel to share with others. If you don't want that, if you don't want people to see it, then you can do the full price, and then I won't record it. And go to channel.thunderwizard.com. I'm going to be focusing on that. We still have the thunderwizard.com, which is still going, and I recommend that as well. Please subscribe. And we have the live guided interdimensional meditations. We're doing another one in about 3 hours. It's Wednesday. So we'll be doing another one tonight. And you can watch that live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, or you can go to the live section on my YouTube channel and you can watch the recorded ones. All right, that's it, my friends. I love you all. I hope you enjoyed this. We'll keep talking about this. All right, take care.